Horror games on handhelds are a bit of a rare breed. This generation, the last generation with the 3DS and the Vita, and the generation before that, horror games really just didn't come to handhelds very often. I mean, the Silent Hill game that came to the PlayStation Vita wasn't even a horror game. It was a Diablo-like RPG game. But a recent indie horror game was released on the Nintendo Switch and really gave me kind of a Corpse Party vibe, and that is always a good thing. Let's dive right into it. Here is my review of the Coma Recut for the Nintendo Switch. The plot of the Coma revolves around a young Korean high school student. On the day of exams, coincidentally the same day that one of the other students tried to commit suicide, he finds a pendant belonging to his homeroom teacher, and during exams he collapses with that pendant in hand, only to wake up in some twisted alternate reality known as the Coma. If being trapped in an alternate dimension weren't enough, a demonic entity that resembles his homeroom teacher is constantly stalking and chasing him with murder weapons out for his blood. Now, the story of the Coma is really interesting to me because it has a really big Corpse Party feel to it, with the school setting, how you get there, and a few other things that I can't really spoil. The only thing I don't like is how it ended. The game's plot starts out really interesting and really nice, and you get to a crucial story point where you think all of the lore you've been finding is suddenly going to showcase itself in explaining how you got there, why you're there, but it doesn't. It suddenly goes from crucial plot point to, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart, you have to leave. And the game pretty much ends right after that. To me, it felt like that was a point where the second half of the game was gonna go into effect, but no, just rush out and game's over. There are so many points in the lore, especially the reasoning for why you're in the coma in the first place, that the game never goes into detail with. I mean, if you get the true ending, you do touch on that very, very briefly, but nothing to the extent of actually explaining what's going on and why you ended up there. As far as gameplay goes, the Coma is a side-scrolling survival horror game with puzzle elements and exploration elements. It's similar to games like Claire Extended Cut, with a few features from games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil 3 thrown into the mix. But all in all, it's very similar to how you navigate through areas in Claire Extended Cut. If you're unfamiliar with that title, I'll leave a link in the description below to my review of the PlayStation Vita version of Claire. Now, before we dive into what the Coma is all about, this is the Coma Recut. It is actually a remake of the Coma cutting class that's available on Steam and PC. The main differences between the two versions is that Recut has redone artwork, new animations, and a new gameplay system known as the Hide system. Now, diving into the game itself, this is a 2D side-scrolling horror game. A lot of people are going to look at this and think, ha, a side-scrolling horror game, that's not going to scare me. But the game can scare you, and the reason for that is the killer, the demonic entity that looks like your homeroom teacher. She's not just part of the story, but she is a part of the gameplay system. Across the entirety of the game, she will stalk and chase after you with a knife in hand. And what makes it so intense is that she will randomly appear in any and all rooms you could go into. You never know when or where she's going to appear, only that she will. And she is so dangerous because you can't fight against her. There are no weapons, all you can do is run, make a mad dash for a nearby room with a hiding place like a closet or locker, assuming you can make it there without running out of stamina, and assuming she does not see you go into the hiding place. You then just have to wait for her to give up her search and leave. This is also tense because of the health and exploration system. She takes a lot of health from you when she hits you, and there's an extremely small number of findable health replenishing items across the entirety of the game, so you have to be careful every single time you go into a new room just in case she's there. And the exploration system raises that tension even more. There are a lot of notes and a lot of key items that you're not going to notice if you run past them. So you need to slowly explore each room so you can find everything there is to find. And that really brings in a risk. If you stay in one place too long, the killer will eventually make their way into that room and go after you. So you've got to explore, but you've also got to be careful. And the biggest thing to help you is sound. You have to give a lot of detail to what you're listening to, because there are a lot of warning signs. Footsteps normally precede her coming into the room. So if you listen really carefully while you're exploring, you'll know, and your brain will say, hey, the killer is close by, get ready to run. Check your map so you know where the nearest hiding spot is, because she's about to find you. Now, as far as length is concerned, a single run through the game, or at least your first run through the game, will probably take you at least 5 to 8 hours. It might even be more, considering all of the different retries you're probably going to do if you run into status ailments that end up killing you, or you just are unlucky and get stabbed too many times by your stalker. And after that, as far as replayability goes, there are multiple endings, so you can always go back and play the game again to try to get the true ending. As far as presentation goes, honestly, I can't really tell a difference between the Coma cutting class and the Coma Recut. Not that it really matters, because the Switch only has the remake. But we have a very kind of cartoon anime-like style, really crisp visuals, really nice animations, just, it's 2D, but it's really refined and polished well. And the performance is that way as well. You've got really short loading times, you never see any frame rate drops, but that's not to say that I don't have a nitpick here. I'm not sure if this is controls, really, or presentation itself, but a lot of button presses have input lag, for the lack of a better term. When you're moving around with the analog stick, there's no lag, but when you hit one of the arrow buttons to open up your map or see your next objective, there is about a 2-second waiting time between the time you hit the button and the time the action actually works. And the same goes for going into a hiding spot, and that is where things get very annoying and very frustrating. When you're running from the killer, you need to get into a hiding spot as soon as possible so you can be hiding when she comes into the room so she doesn't see you go in there. And when you run into a room, you tap A in front of a locker, and it has a 2-second delay. That's 2 seconds that the killer can jump in and see you go into that hiding spot, leading her to immediately run up to the locker and stab you to death. Now let's talk about battery life. This is a 2D game, and as such, you can expect to have a pretty good amount of battery life per charge. Here are my times from 100% to 0%. With maximum brightness and the Wi-Fi on, 4 hours and 13 minutes. Maximum brightness with the Wi-Fi off, 4 hours and 26 minutes. Low brightness with the Wi-Fi on, 5 hours and 45 minutes. Low brightness with the Wi-Fi off, 5 hours and 58 minutes. 4 to 6 hours. That's a really nice chunk of the game all in one charge. In conclusion, the Coma Recut is a very tense horror game that'll give you the creeps and make you jump from beginning to end. Now, the game ends pretty abruptly, and the lag for certain button inputs does cause some pretty significant issues when you're running for dear life. But it's still a fun little game for those wanting some horror on the go. Reviews to Go rates the Coma Recut for the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below or head to the website at www.reviewstogo.com.